cautious, and she knows just what it takes to make her proud blush. All the boys think she's a spy. She's got Bette Davis eyes. She'll tease you, she'll unease you just to please you. She's got Bette Davis eyes.
If you wake up and don't want to smile, if it takes just a little while, open your eyes and look at the day. You'll see things in a different way. Don't stop thinking about tomorrow. Don't stop, he'll soon be here. He'll be better than before. Yesterday's gone, yesterday's gone. Why not think about times to come, not about the things that you've done? If life was bad to you, just think what tomorrow will do. Don't stop thinking about tomorrow. Don't stop, he'll soon be here. He'll be better than before. Yesterday's gone, yesterday's gone. To see you smile, if it takes just a little while. I know you don't believe that it's true. I never meant any harm to you. Don't stop thinking about tomorrow. Don't stop, he'll soon be here. He'll be better than before. Yesterday's gone, yesterday's gone. Don't you look back. Oh yeah. Don't you look back. No. Don't you look back. No, no.
you see the color of deception, turning your world around again. You wanna make her suicide blonde, love devastation, suicide blonde. You wanna make her suicide blonde, love devastation, suicide blonde.
I used to think maybe you love me, now baby I'm sure. And I just can't wait till the day when you knock on my door. Now every time I go to the mailbox, gotta hold myself down. Yeah, 'cause I just can't wait till you write me you're coming around. I'm walking in sunshine. Oh, I'm walking in sunshine. Oh, I'm walking in sunshine. Oh, and don't it feel good? Hey, don't it feel good? I used to think maybe you love me, now I know that it's true. And I don't want to spend my life just in waiting for you. Now I don't want you back for the weekend, not back for a day. No, no, no. I said, baby, I just want you back, and I want you to stay. Yeah. I'm walking in sunshine. Oh, I'm walking in sunshine. Oh, I'm walking in sunshine. Oh, and don't it feel good? Ooh, don't it feel good? Yeah. Oh, don't it feel good? I'm walking in sunshine. Oh, I'm walking in sunshine. Oh, I'm walking in sunshine. Oh, and don't it feel good? I feel the love, feel the love, feel the love that's really real. I feel the love, I feel the love that's really real. And I'll say it again, oh yeah. I say it again, yeah, yeah. I'm walking on sunshine, baby, yeah.
You will not in a little toy shop buy bag balloons with the money we've got. Set them free at the break of dawn. To one by one they were gone. Back at base box in the software, flash the message, something's out there, floating in the summer sky. 99 red balloons go by. sky. Last night and
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the playground stage. I hope you all had a good lunch and are not feeling too sleepy with the food. We are going to wake you up here at the playground stage. It is the best place to be at South Summit right now. I absolutely guarantee it. My name's Oisín Lunny. I am Professor of UX-Driven Business at Barcelona Technology School. I'm also a senior contributor to Forbes. I'm the music editor for a fashion magazine called Phoenix, go figure. And I'm also a freelance events host, which is why I'm here. I'm so grateful to be here. I had a great time at South Summit over the past few days. I learned an awful lot of cool new stuff, and we have a fantastic schedule of speakers lined up this afternoon. Now, I'd like to frame this next section of the day by quoting from the mighty Forrester. They said there are 4 business imperatives in this new era we're living in, the era of the customer. And those 4 imperatives, very important for any business. Number 1, turn big data into business insights. Number 2, completely transform the CX. Number 3, embrace the mobile mind shift. People behave completely differently on their mobiles to how they ever behaved before in history. And point number 4, become a digital disruptor. So this is why this next section of the day at the playground stage is so important. It's all about the data and digital revolution. And we have a fantastic keynote to open proceedings. I know it's just after lunch, but I'd love it if you gave a really, really warm, loud, energetic welcome to our first keynote speaker of the afternoon from Amadeus Ventures. Please welcome to the stage, Susanna Chu.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, it is actually quite difficult to top this type of energy right before me. Hello, everyone. My name is Susanna Chu, Amadeus Ventures, the startup investment program of Amadeus IT Group. So today I'm going to talk to you about the trends that we're seeing in the travel industry, what we care about, like the practitioners of in innovation in our industry, and a little bit more about the program Amadeus Ventures. Let's move on. The destinations that we are going to these days, in terms of travel, is transforming. Space Adventure has been sending people to outer space for the last, they've sent 7 civilians into the outer space, and altogether they spend more than 1,000 hours in 3 very distinguished gentlemen who are working on the mission of sending a lot of us into the outer space at a fraction of the price. And they promise that they're going to do that within a matter of months. And so we look forward to the date when that happens. And not only about destinations, the accommodations that we are going to are also changing as well. And this one is a fantastic example. A hotel that is currently being built near the Arctic Circle is the world's first energy-positive hotel. It looks gorgeous. I'm sure that it is going to be very comfortable to stay there as a hotel. But it is also a power plant that is going to generate all the electricity that this hotel is going to need, and to even cover the construction energy that it took to produce. And there are many other ways of going from A to B. We are seeing a lot of development around lightweight aircrafts that are promising to help us to go from regional airports from one to the other by passing hubs and saving many, many hours when we do so. No? And spending a few quality hours with your friends and family while you're going through that journey. And how about Hyperloop, promising a 1,200 kilometers per hour experience speeding through the major hub cities. And we can even travel through the channels now, since this summer, by a hoverboard. What other surprise can we who are at the moment a lot more empowered by our digital devices that we carry with us 24 hours a day. They expect very personalized services and recommendations. They expect transparencies, in terms of the products that they are being sold to about travel. And they definitely expect an end-to-end kind of like offering where it's not only the hotel and the flight that they can buy digitally, and it is also about the restaurant, is it the tours and activities, or is it other experiences that you would like to go through when you are traveling? Travel remains a very stressful experience. Some of you might have traveled into Madrid like this week. Is it about the bag that you're carrying? Is it about the custom? Is it about the transit that you need to catch? How can we actually help our travelers to manage the stress and make travel more delightful as an experience? These are all the topics that we care about in Amadeus, in the innovation joint team. Innovation to us is about validating new opportunities. It's about doing things differently. It's about delivering new values to our customers for both in the mid and to the short term. We do it by combining our internal strengths with the external community that we are interacting with, like in the events today, focusing on the three areas around enable travelers, providing an end-to-end experience in a stress-free manner. Focusing back on the program that I run, which is Amadeus Ventures, it is a startup investment program where we look for concepts that are relevant for the travel industry. Sometimes we say that we're sitting at the crossroad of technology and travel. And the program was started back in year 2013, at the tail end of year 2013, and so far we have scanned more than 2,500 companies. We have invested in 14, but even more important, it's not about the investing, it's about the collaborations. So together with our portfolio companies, we have identified more than 30 opportunities of joint collaborations and new use case development. And at the end, it is about the ecosystem. It is about getting to know more entrepreneurs, getting to know more the accelerators, VCs, financials, and corporations, etc., such that we can connect with you guys to give back some of the learnings that we have, to do mentorship back to the startups, and at the same time receiving feedback from you guys in terms of how we're performing as well. This is a snapshot of our portfolio. We have invested in concepts including ground transportation, price prediction, the artificial intelligence, so on and so forth. And the criteria that we look for early stage startups. If you are a startup, if you have a minimum viable product with a few customers and KPIs that you can prove to us that your concept is working, we would like to hear from you. Excellent team, they cannot emphasize more because we focus on early stage. People is the heart of our investment theses. A scalable business model, given that Amadeus is a global company, that we do look for concepts that we can take to everywhere around the world with us. Last but not least, strategic alignment to the vision that we see how the travel is going to be transforming. In terms of what we look for as an investment focus, at the heart of it, it has to be the transformation of a customer, the end traveler journey. Focusing back on the 3 points that I mentioned earlier, enabling that travel experience with the technology that we are seeing today. Is it about artificial intelligence? Is it about Internet of Things? Is it blockchain? Is it biometrics? How can we combine these technologies that are advancing very fast in our environment and be able to apply those into the travel industry? And here's actually the end of my presentation. So thank you very much for your attention, and we hope to be part of this journey with you. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you so much. My goodness, what a great lightning keynote to get us started with our fantastic data and digital revolution section. Okay, so now we're going to have a little stage changeover. We're going to bring some chairs to the stage. We're going to line up a really interesting panel. I just want to check, has everyone here downloaded the South Summit application on your mobile device of choice? Who's got the South Summit mobile app? South Summit mobile app? Yes, yes, yes. Many people? Okay, wonderful, great. Okay, do you know that you can connect with your fellow delegates here and speakers by just scanning the QR code on the badge with the app? You probably do. If you don't, now you do. You actually can. It's wonderful. Another cool thing you can do in the mobile app is after, for instance, our wonderful keynote we just had there, you can actually find the session in the program. You can filter it by stage. It's very easy. Click on the name of the session and you can award your wonderful, wonderful speakers a full 5 stars and leave a little note for them. Was there anything that really helped you? Anything you really thought was awesome about the presentation? Leave them a note. It will go back to the speakers. South Summit, do look at all of the feedback, and we really want to know what you think of our speakers and what you think of our topic. So I really hope you will get very much involved with South Summit, maybe even beyond the event, by building this South Summit family, this South Summit community, and making sure you do as much connecting with as many good people here as possible. So my kind of rule to live by is ABC, always be connecting. So a little change to the Glengarry, Glen Ross here. It's not always be closing, it's always be connecting, because that leads to everything else you could possibly want, I promise you. Okay, so we now are going to kick off with our first panel of the Data and Digital Revolution section, and it's a really awesome subject. It's all about reinventing mobility services through data. So that thing I said earlier about turning big data into business insights, it's absolutely all over this. It's wonderful. So, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to welcome to the stage the moderator for the next panel from Target Global. Please welcome Jorge Fonturbel. Welcome, Jorge. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, I would like to welcome our speakers today. So we have here Hans Christ. He's the CEO of BP, the largest car subscription company in Spain. We have Mariano Silveira, who's the president of Cabify Europe. I think Cabify doesn't need any type of introduction here. I think probably half of you came using the app. And here to my left, I have Harry Franks. He's the COO of Seagull, a usage-based insurance based in the UK. They closed a very successful Series B round a few months ago, led by us. So happy to have you all of you here. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, to be here, and good afternoon. It feels really good to be here, back in Madrid, back in my hometown. So my name is Jorge Fonturbel, and I'm an investor at Target Global. For those of you who don't know us yet, we are a European VC firm. We are managing around 1 billion in asset under management. We invest across stage in the software, marketplace, fintech, and of course, mobility, where we have a dedicated mobility fund. We are headquartered in Berlin. We have offices also in London, Tel Aviv, and recently we announced Barcelona. So as a Spaniard, I feel very proud to be actively contributing to put Spain on the entrepreneurial market in Europe. Today, I'm very honored to have you all of you here, so thank you very much. It is, in fact, a very complementary panel, so I could perfectly envision in the short term a point in time where half of our trips are actually done on demand using the Cabify app, where the supply of those cars is actually provided by subscription, not anymore ownership of the cars, and with Seagull insuring all of these cars. So I think you should all of you talk after stage. You have something to talk in common. So in 2015, it was the CEO and chairman of General Motors who said that the automotive industry was poised for more change in the next 5 to 10 years than it has happened in the last 15. And this change is not going to come in the short term from autonomous vehicles, but from companies like you who are inventing new business model innovations for the mobility industry. And one of the biggest trends that we're seeing is the change of car ownership. So consumers preferring rather not to buy anymore a car, but subscribing and using other type of mobility solutions. So the first question goes for you, Mariano. So what has been the impact on, of your on-demand service like Cabify on making people less dependent on the cars? And as Uber announced very recently, as more and more services, mobility services are appearing in the city, what is going to be the role of Cabify on aggregating all of these services under the application?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me. It's always a pleasure to be here at the South Summit. For us, it's of course, our core business. The day that Juan decided to create Cabify, it's the same idea today. If you think about mobility today and the last 40 or 50 years, probably there has been a small change in the way we move, in the way we consume mobility. Of course, there's a couple of alternatives today. There's not so many, but there's a couple of companies like us that are approaching a new business model for the consumer to give them the possibility or the alternative to consume mobility or to move in a very different way in the city. As you mentioned, people are not interested anymore to buy cars or to maintain them. If you consider that probably there's only 2 or 3% of the time this car is being used. And of course, a company like us, and when we see not only taxis but also PHVs or UVTCs is the way we call it here in Spain. Comparing to that 2 or 3% of percentage of occupancy, we are talking about 75% of occupation. So, of course, there's a totally different way to approach the mobility, to provide services for the people to pay only by use of this new, to buy kilometers or to buy time, but only paying for that. And of course, people is really used to more and more to use this kind of services. As you mentioned, we are approaching not only considering about vehicles with drivers, but also many kind of different alternatives to move around the city. We are also providing alternatives like kick scooters, like motorbikes, also taxi. Probably most of the people don't know that we are doing more taxi rides in the whole world than any other alternative, even more than PHVs. We are probably one of the most biggest platforms, taxi platforms in the world, and we are very proud of that, of course. So I believe that the market is really a small grain. We are expecting that this industry will grow a lot, probably more than 5 or 8 times in the next 10, 15 years. And we hope that things that really is going to change a lot, because we need that change. We cannot still doing the things like we are doing today. There's no sustainable mobility the way we're doing today.
Yeah, in fact, mobility as a service is a now more common use word. And the question for us is, who is going to be the player at the end, who's going to aggregate all the services around? And definitely you guys have a very good platform to start building new verticals. So apart from ride-hailing, there are new models like car subscription that are playing a key role to change the ownership of the cars. Car subscription emerged basically to cover the gap between the by-minute car rental companies and the traditional leasing contract. So Hans, as you are introducing an all-inclusive service, how are you making customers understand the value that you're bringing versus, the traditional buying a car, buying insurance, repairing the car, maintaining the car, and so on?
Yeah, so, thanks first for the invitation. I think there's several key facts here. So there's, if you figured out for the past 50 years, how do you access a car if you need a car for the longer term, 99% of those transactions take care in a physical place, dealership, right? So the experience of going into a dealership really, I don't think it's very good. There's a lot of friction. You go and visit a dealership, contracts, you have to wait 3 weeks for the car, and at the end of the day, you need to hire insurance on the side, and maintenance later, pay for maintenance, and so owning a car has become expensive. And what we basically do is we try to bring that convenient to the customer, where not only it's a 100% digital process, but also with a monthly subscription fee, everything is included, and you don't have to worry about anything. And plus the added value comparing to traditional leasing, that you can swap cars or change cars if your needs change, right? I think that's an extremely important value that before wasn't as valued as today, and I explain why. But at the end of the day, a perfect example is if we see car sales in Spain in August, they dropped to the lowest in 10 years. So, and we grew 200% in August. So the question that you were saying, how do you tell people or educate people or tell people that don't buy a car and subscribe to a car? I don't think that it's a job that we are doing now. I think that the market is doing it for us. Why? Because now we have restrictions of pollution, and for example, diesel is getting banned. So basically people and consumers now have the doubt that if the car that they buy today, they're going to be able to use it tomorrow or in a year, right? So if they make that investment and they have to sell it and buy a new car in a year because they cannot go into the city with that car, then it doesn't make sense to buy a car. And the solution that we provide is, listen, just subscribe to a car, pay a monthly fee, and if in the future you need to change car, you just swap it, right? But I think that what is happening is that consumers' minds are changing. People are more used to, because services like Cabify and other mobility services, they are experiencing that you can move in different ways and paying by what you use. And our concept is being able to get away from that friction that exists of buying a car for the longer term into a 2-minute process online and getting the car at home and forgetting about that friction, right? And that's the idea.
Sure, thank you. So supporting all these businesses is insurance. So, and vehicles now, with, for example, in your model, they need to be plugged in and out of your marketplace, or it could be in the case of Cabify that vehicles are going to be ride by different drivers. So, and this is where traditional, insurance model don't really fit. So, question to you, Harry, is how are you collaborating with all these new and supporting all these new mobility services, and where do you see the more potential for usage-based insurance?
Well, I think we've got two business models here which just demonstrate exactly what we've been kind of talking about, which is a rise of usership and a decline of ownership. We've talked about on-demand usage, pay per mile, pay per minute. And what we're doing at Zego really is to try and facilitate that, to try and support companies like these with insurance which is far more fit for purpose. You mentioned that traditional insurance companies would have a very traditional approach to this, but if you're getting car dealerships that are not selling in mid-August, then why should everybody be paying full insurance in mid-August? And so what we're really trying to do is to say that companies like Cabify, like Bibi, they are working with data. They know exactly who is doing what, where, and when. And that data, if they can share it with us, then we can give them an insurance product which maps exactly what's going on. And that really, we believe, is fairer for all. So an end consumer pays only when they are driving. They pay only when someone's in the back of the car at a higher rate, because ultimately the risk is higher. And when companies are on lease subscriptions, you're not having to go out and buy a separate insurance policy. If you do want to buy it separately, you can buy it in a very short period, which matches your actual rental term. So there are lots and lots of ways we can do this. You asked where I think we can take this. As a consumer, I'm incredibly excited about the future. As we said, I think the next 10 years in mobility are going to be absolutely amazing, and we're going to see things that we haven't seen before. But I really firmly believe that insurance underpins all of this. Insurance is there as this safety net, but if it is not fit for purpose, if it is stuck in legacy provision, so working with traditional insurance companies and they say this is a one-size-fits-all insurance policy, it is going to slow it down. And insurance really should be there to enable more businesses like this, to enable more people to start companies with kick scooters, which present some really interesting challenges for insurance. When you've got one car and potentially 5,000 drivers, how do you price that? So I see that flexibility in insurance, understanding the data that new enterprises produce and being able to deliver back to those companies flexible and fit-for-purpose insurance is just going to be absolutely vital in this next 10 years of change.
In fact, and as you were saying, this can be extrapolated not only to cars, but any type of vehicle. You mentioned e-scooters, but then you have all the parcel delivery drivers, which their fleets are constantly increasing, that they need also services like you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we work across Europe with companies that do food delivery, parcel delivery, people delivery, kick scooters. We actually do a whole range of on-demand liability services that are non-motor as well. But really, our focus is on motor because we think that that's the real driver of change over the next decade.
And now switching gears, so another big topic has been regulation. So cities are playing a bigger role in the development of the city. And I have to say that, for example, here in Madrid, we are seeing a constant change in the regulatory environment that affects, in this case, which vehicles, which cars can enter in and out the city centers, or in the case of private operators, how many scooters, where, and can be deployed into the cities. And of course, we all have the ambition of making cities safer, less congested, and less polluted. But municipality, I believe that they often lack all the tools and the knowledge to really orchestrate all the different transportation modes and what is happening in the city. So, for example, in Berlin, and this is a case that I'm seeing like every other day, public transport operators are still sending students to count the number of people that are actually using a bus or actually using the metro. So there is a lot of difference in the ways you're using the data from the customers that comes in any different way, and the way public transport or public entities are dealing with it. So Mariano, Cabify has been at the forefront almost since the very beginning of public relationship with regulators. So how are you working with municipalities to improve and to make them better understand how people are really moving within the city?
Yeah, it's a very good question, because it really depends on each of, for example, in our case, each of our 130 cities that we operate, because each situation, it's impossible to compare them. It's impossible to have only one approach. I think it's probably the biggest mistake. From the conception of Cabify, we decided to be really flexible, to really adapt, and to have the ability to have a very transparent conversation with the local regulator. First of all, to explain them, okay, because this is a very new, a really new industry for everyone, and of course you cannot expect that each government really understand not only the way that consumers are behaving or starting to behave, but also the new kind of business models and the approach that these kind of companies or that kind of companies like us are having. So the first of all is try to have the same level of conversation. Okay, we have a problem. We all have a problem. We have a problem of moving in around the city. We will have a problem probably in the next years considering pollution, considering the urban space. There's a lot of many complexities in the city, and we are here to help. We are not here to compete against you. We are not here to turn down the public transport. We believe that the public transportation is the best way to move, but we need all to realize that it's not the best, and it's impossible to be the only way to move. You cannot solve, it's impossible to solve all the mobility problems in a city only with public transportation, because it's not discretional. It's very difficult to be flexible, to adapt to demand and all of things like that. So let us contribute, let us collaborate with you. And of course, the second kind of conversation is, okay, probably there's going to be a mistake or a misunderstanding about some kind of things. For example, labor. For example, the impact of the things that you are doing. And probably we are still having a very good conversations with the governments. There has been a lot of governments where when we started the conversations, finally we were building a new regulation together with all the private players and the government and the taxi unions. For example, that happened in Portugal, and it took us more than a year and a half to do that. But it's the only way to build something sustainable and to build something that really helps citizens to move easier, to move better. So I think you need to be really You have to have a lot of patience, of course, but most of all, try to convince them that you are trying to do things well, you are here to help, and we need to change together, because it's impossible that the government in any level can do it by themselves. So we hope that the conversations will move to a better position in the near future. Spain has to see more what is happening in Europe, in the northern countries and other European members. But we are very optimistic about that, so we hope we can still working together.
I agree. If public transport is going to continue and will be a major source or option for mobility within the cities, and maybe in urban cities it's more clear, but when you go maybe to rural areas, the impact and the way they operate, it definitely needs to change. So running, when you are moving to rural areas where you have lower density, you need more, flexibility. It needs to be more on demand, and I think this is like where, public transport operators, they can learn from you into how to operate this public transportation in the rural areas, which I believe it's mostly run at a loss at the moment. So Harry, you mentioned before, there is not a one-size-fits-all type of insurance, and in order to offer flexible and tailored insurance to your customer, one of the things that you are doing is understanding the driving behavior of the people. So customers, for example, who have a safer driving pattern, they can pay less for the premium. So across the fleet that you have seen across that you are insuring, have you seen an improvement in the reduction of accidents or fatalities just because they know that you are monitoring them and that they can actually, by improving the way they drive, they can save some money?
Yes. Simple answer, yes. It really depends on who your policyholder is. If you're operating a fleet of commercial vehicles, then your fleet owner ultimately has the control over their drivers. And if they can then see the way in which someone is driving, the way in which that then could impact their insurance policy and their costs, then what Zego is giving them are levers to pull to say, hey, look, I could potentially impact my insurance premium, but I could also impact the impact on my assets, these vehicles that I want to be constantly renting out. If I can see that Harry is a dreadful driver, I want to get him off the road, because it's not just that they might have a claim, it's then one of my rental assets might suddenly stop being used. The key to insurance is relatively simple. You've got to take a little bit more premium than you pay out in claims. And if you can influence people to stop having crashes, then you are going to see
meaningful consumer journeys for their clients, and also more meaningful interactions for us in the digital world. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Paul Goldbaum, who's the CTO of SeedTag, which is an in-image advertising platform. It started here in Spain, in Madrid 5 years ago, now live in 7 countries. And I'm also going to introduce Bill Murphy, who's the CTO of Orbital Ads, which focuses on a slightly different problem, which is search engine marketing. So we're going to dig into these 2 particular use cases, and we're also going to discuss the major trends that are affecting advertising and where we think AI might take us in the future. So please give a warm round of applause to our 2 main speakers. Okay, guys. Paul Goldbaum and Bill Murphy, not very Spanish names, right? And they've got cracking English accents as well. So guys, I'd just like to hear from the 2 of you, first of all, if you explain to the audience, just put in context what you guys do, what you've built, the problems that you're focusing on. So Paul, perhaps we start with you.
SeedTag is an in-image advertising company. We work with some of the biggest publishers in the web across the 7 different countries that we operate in. And we offer them this new capability of monetizing their images by giving them a way to place ads on top of them. The offering is that we give this very stunning visual creatives, new kind of innovative formats and very targeted, contextualized advertising that's completely different to what they're used to doing.
Okay, and for yourself, Bill?
Okay, at Orbital Ads, what we're doing is basically bringing the latest trends and breakthroughs in technology, like machine learning, NLP, and everything underneath that, to a very traditional sector. Not traditional sector, but something that's been done by hand for the last 19 years, which is the analysis and management of keywords inside SEM campaigns, which is kind of you're targeting what kind of keywords you want to appear your ads, and that's basically what we're doing, kind of breaking through with new technologies, a traditional area in ads.
So I think there's two formats here. We've got a business that works with images. The visual commerce is a huge trend at the moment. And we also have text, which for any one of us, we spend a lot of our time in Google search, right? Or few of us maybe use Bing or Yahoo. But within Google search engine marketing is really fundamental to every business at every size, right? So I think we were talking earlier on, and you were saying that in 20 years, this hasn't progressed as a discipline and that people are still using Excel. If you think of a small business who's maybe targeting here in Madrid, that's fine. But when you get up to larger scale businesses who are running campaigns in multiple languages, that's a huge challenge. How do you really solve that for them? And what's the technology behind that enables you to do that?
Yeah, as you said before, the complexity of data and the volume of data is growing every single day. SEM campaigns are also linked to that growth and complication on how you manage things. What we've done is bringing the analysis of keywords, something that only a human could do before, to computers. Computers now can understand words, translate them into numbers, into zeros and ones, and based on that make decisions. So that's kind of what we're working with and developing. Algorithms that are able to translate those keywords into numbers, see the relation between numbers, and make decisions. All the technology we're developing is language agnostic. One of the use cases I used to tell is that one of our clients runs campaigns in Japan, and the first time we executed the algorithms recommended words in Japanese. It was just a bunch of symbols. No one understood in the company what they meant, so we had to translate them and make sure it makes sense. We sent it to a client, and it seemed to work. But since we're working with characters and translating that into numbers, our latest case is that one of the algorithms recommended an emoji. That was crazy. We were like, what? Is this going to work? Is it not? We asked the client, is this okay with you? And he said, sure, if it's going to work. That emoji, the first day, brought 20 conversions. So turning words into numbers, analyzing and algorithmically making decisions on behalf of our clients is a really performance booster for them and for their revenue. It's something very interesting.
And so, I mean, Paul, in terms of SeedTag, you also have a large machine learning capacity behind. We talk about machine learning, machine learning is a model. You have to train the model. You need a data set to train the model. So from when you guys started, how did you start to build that intelligence into the model? And maybe give us an idea of the scale that you're at right now and how that helps you build a competitive advantage.
So just to put it a bit into perspective, like our machine learning capabilities are a lot in line with what Bill was just telling. So we analyze a lot of what's happening on each and every website. We understand very fundamentally what's being talked about on every page, what's happening there. And yeah, that obviously poses a lot of challenges, of technical challenges. We did start out, like our first learnings was to not try to make these massive data sets with thousands of articles or of data points, because that would be completely impossible for a small team like ours, to extract information from that. It was more about being very intelligent about what kind of data we extracted, how we would treat that data, making sure that we're using also machine learning during the training phase to augment our capabilities. This made us be able to build something very small and start building from there to going from just one language, for example. We started out just in Spanish, and then bring this over to the 7 different languages that we have today. So very important there was to be very intelligent about where we were applying machine learning and start growing from there. And you get this traction, you start to grow, and then you end up building this very big machine which understands 7 languages like a human, pretty much.
I would like to follow up on that a little bit. As we've seen it, and any mathematician can tell you this, making algorithms that work with huge data sets is much easier than algorithms with small data sets and making decisions based on small data sets. So it's kind of very important what you said is getting those data, making the right decisions for very little data, and then extending it to larger data sets. And if you solve and crack the key on making good decisions with very little data, you can extend that and scale it, and that's a huge point. Knowing to work with small data sets and extending it.
I think you mentioned before that CTAG is now processing close to 4 billion page views on a monthly basis, and you're continuously running in real time. The classic sort of technical question here is, did you ever believe that it would be that big? Did you build it to be that big? No. What were for the CTOs that are in the room, if there are any, what were the challenges that you face when you're trying to reach that scale?
Yeah, we only dreamt of this becoming that big, but we had to be a bit rational. You don't start out, building things to be that big, or you're just gonna get, pressed down by the whole weight of this. So you start out small. You start with a system that you can, change very frequently, very easily. Do things that don't scale. You've all heard that. And then start building from there. So in the beginning, it was like everything was focused to be very manual, to be, supervised by us, And then as we started to see product market fit, and we saw this, this nice trend of the curve going up. It was like, hey, I think we got something here. Let's prepare for this. And that was the point where we really started out thinking about what this would look like long term, thinking in terms of scale, thinking in terms of where we're going to be 5 years from now. So yeah, now the whole system is completely built, and all the challenges regarding the massive amount of traffic that we have, the very tight millisecond latencies that we have to support to not impact user experience. These machine learning algorithms which have to run with these amazing amount of information. All that now is in the place of being able to handle that kind of load, but it wasn't designed out initially that way, but rather transitioned into that as we started growing.
It's funny because, our consumer behaviors are changing, right? And we change in function to the way that we are advertised too. So there's almost like a feedback effect, right? I react better to the images because you're better serving the images to me. So the model is able to grow. I wanted to return back to a comment you made about languages before and the rise of the emoji, right? So it's quite recently been announced that WhatsApp is opening up for advertising purposes. And if you're like me, you maybe have started to use your Facebook account less and less, but WhatsApp's the first thing you open in the morning, and you're certainly on Instagram throughout the day. So I wanted to ask a little bit about the duopoly, right, between Google in terms of search, Facebook just in terms of data. How do you guys approach working with them? They've been considered in many spheres as frenemies, right? So friends that you have to get close to, but also enemies because they're eating market share from everybody. So how do you position yourselves with them?
Apart from Facebook, Google, there's also Amazon, Twitter, AliExpress. There's huge players. And a key point of building a product and data-driven marketing product, you have to kind of think global. You have to think of new players. You don't know in 3 years who's going to be the third biggest player or the fourth biggest player, and you probably want to have a product that works with those platforms. You also have the risk of them taking over, doing something similar to your product. So you being CTO, my point of view, and I think we share this, is delivering value from a technical point of view, making kind of agnostic to any platform, and if you're able to build a good platform, that platform can adapt to whatever comes, to whatever new trends, new products these platforms bring. So you kind of have to think in the next 6 months and next year and what will come in 3 years, 5 years constantly, and see what's coming to market, other players, what they're bringing and what value, and just keep on focusing on bringing real value from your product and extending it as fast as you can. One of the things we have inside our company, for example, is iterating every week. We have very short sprints, which is how you work with different teams, and they're a week long. So whatever you get in that week done is great. Bigger projects don't have scope for that, so you have to build everything to smaller pieces. Those pieces have to add value, have to be good for sales, have to be good for clients, have to be good for the overall company. So I think it's just focusing on what's coming and delivering very fast.
Yeah, would you agree?
Yeah, so in our case, our relation with them is kind of similar but different. So as you might know, it's called a duopoly because they're pretty much managing 80% of the, or 50, no, not that much, but a whole big chunk of the advertising dollars. So we're at the point, every player in the industry who really wants to reach some scale actually has to find a way to play along with these guys because the advertising dollars, the agencies are a lot of them are pretty locked up using them. So you have to find a way to interoperate with them. That's sometimes easier and sometimes not that easy because they know their position and they're not willing to give it up. So sometimes you're very limited in what you can do and can't do to get to work with an agency who's, for example, logged in with Google. So yeah, in our experience is we try to have a close relationship with them. We try to be have a fluid communication with them and try to solve issues and stuff. But most of the times we're finding this to be a very hard position that pretty much every advertising company or ad tech company is finding itself in when it's in relation with Google or with Facebook.
You mentioned a little bit there about the agency relationship, right? So many people here today might have some people from agencies. We talk about the future of data-driven advertising. A lot of you will think, when we think of advertising, of Mad Men, right? Netflix, 1950s, sipping whiskey in the boardroom, a little bit of creative on the board. But what we see here is it's more math men, right? Math men and Mad Men.
Totally the Mad Men guy.
You're a Mad Men guy. But yeah, what I wanted to ask was like, how open are agencies to working with new technology? My own background, I worked with WPP for 3 years, and I saw varying results from different agencies as to how open they were to new technologies, how stubborn they were as well, trying to retain client contracts for themselves, things like non-transparent margins, which affect the industry in a negative light. So, I think it'd be interesting to hear how you work with agencies, and in general, how product businesses work with agencies and essentially try and enable or disintermediate them, because that really is the future of advertising, right?
Yeah. So in our case, agencies, so for me, they're like a catalyst for innovation in respect to the brands, right? So in our case, we work very closely with them, both our sales teams, operations teams, creative teams, design, are always in a very direct relation with them because it's really important that we bring these, if you get these guys on board, if you really show them something that adds value and that's different from what brands have done in the past, then they can be a great ally, to get your product in front of the client, show what you can do, bring them new ideas because they're, as you mentioned, they're a lot in touch with different vendors. They're doing a lot of different things at the same time. So in our case, they're great allies. We try to be also very close with them and go together as a team, two brands, and work on that relation together and really, innovate as a team.
I'm not that close to agencies, but of course agencies are a huge player in marketing and you have to work along with them. I'm going to rewind a little bit, and traditionally agencies have not been very innovative and very close, not very transparent. Transparency is coming everywhere, and it's a must. That technology brings that, and data is there, and a lot of people are more and more interested in seeing their data and seeing the results, seeing where every cent is spent, and what's happening with their overall budget. So the good thing is that agencies have not embraced technology, or they've embraced it through acquisitions and in different areas. So bringing the latest in technology is a huge point. So agencies feel the need of delivering products like ours that are very relevant, very new, very analytical, and performance-wise, they're very clear what they're bringing. So we're seeing agencies coming close, wanting to offer our product, and we see that we will have relation with them. And also we see a shift sometimes, and I think this is like cyclic, like where big startups, big companies start to do their agency-related task, or at least SEM-related task in-house. They want to learn how to work with the platforms, what to deliver, how to set up their campaigns, because every time it's more tied to all their acquisition funnel. So sometimes working with agencies is not that easy. I guess this trend will change as agencies renew their offering and how they work, but it's also cyclic.
I mean, the topic here is the future, right? Do you see AI replacing outright agencies? You know, for example, WPP has something like 200,000 people working around the world. I would doubt that many of them are data scientists or product guys. Is this one of the sectors where we will see artificial intelligence displacing account managers, marketing managers? You're nodding your head. You're nodding your head. So is that yes? Yes.
Yeah,
no, we're not saying yes.
No, I think the sooner we all accept that we're all going to be replaced by algorithms, you know, the better off we all are going to be. It's going to happen eventually, I mean, for everyone. At this point, I think that there's still, like, we're in a stage, or the trend that I see, like, in the near future is AI as a way of augmenting, you know, human capacities, you know, understanding things that would be much more difficult to understand without AI, understanding their targets, understanding what's happening in real time in massive amounts, through massive amounts of data. So it's more of augmenting the capabilities of the operator, you know, the driver behind the wheel, helping them make better decisions, you know, but there still has to be, you know, this human component in the end who will get that information and take, you know, the best decisions. Creativity is, at least for now, a more human, you know, thing. So yeah, I think that component, at least for now, you know, it's definitely.
I have to interject and say that Lexus, I don't know if any of you saw it last year, but Lexus actually ran their first campaign where the creative was made by artificial intelligence. So they trained the model watching the last 15 years of automobile creative advertising, and they generated a script, and they filmed it exactly as the AI proposed. So I would argue that creativity is not purely a human thing anymore, unfortunately.
I would go with what you said. A lot of us studied algebra in school, and most of us forgot it. Computers are very good at that, so let them do those decisions. Crossing data, Excel has its limitations, so products like ours, what they do is extend the capabilities of making decisions, of extending that data to a point humans can't do it. So this is the immediate future, and IE will evolve, and what the idea is that humans will be necessary to run campaigns, to understand business needs, to have creativities, to have other areas, but what computers are taking over is tasks that are very labor expensive. Yeah. So agencies probably will shift down in size or go towards data scientists and engineers instead of more administrative positions.
I wanted to ask, just we have a few minutes left here. In terms of changing consumer behavior, because this is what drives advertising, right? You try and affect it, but you also respond to it. Where do you see the sort of the new frontier in consumer behavior, where artificial intelligence could take hold that presently it's maybe slightly undiscovered?
I think this has a lot to do with how people interact with technology and how that is evolving, right? So we've seen a big shift when we've gone from PCs to mobile devices, and this will continue, with as technology evolves, as we go with more, intelligent things around us, intelligent gadgets around us.
The smart home, you mean?
Smart home, okay. Wearables, VR, connected TV, all those kind of things, new technologies that are, closer to us now, will shape how the amount of data that we have about users, about consumers, and also the way that we approach them, and the impact that we have. So it's really interesting to understand or to think about how we can approach them and what new forms of interaction with the user these new technologies are gonna open up as we move into the future and these technologies become more ubiquitous. So yeah.
I would also say that technology is much further away than society. Society is not yet ready for a lot of areas of technology and evolution. Introducing different areas is going to be complicated at work, but it's step by step. So we have to figure out how to embrace technology into organizations, into companies, into day-to-day. And this is one of the main challenges a lot of data-driven companies are facing, how to introduce that, how to introduce it to your all the decision makers, then to all the people working in
technology. And certainly when we try our best to keep up with changing consumer behaviors, to think about where the opportunity might be. And one of the biggest things that we've seen is voice, right? The smart speaker in our home, we think that we're just talking to Alexa, but actually we're just building their data set for them. So we think that there's a huge opportunity in programmatic advertising, certainly as well around the rise of new forms of media, podcasts in particular. You have hyper-focused audiences, maybe only 1,000 or 2,000 people listening to a podcast, but they will have the exact same demographic. So the men between 30, 35 who love gardening in the mountains, and there's a podcast for them. And the brands that want to reach them will not go to the conventional channels, they will go to podcasting. So delivering that advert in a programmatic way, using artificial intelligence, is a trend that we think is happening, it's starting to take off, and we think that we will all be sort of at their will, their beck and call in the coming years. I'd like you all to put your hands together. Today we've tried to cover in 30 minutes some of the trends affecting advertising. Also, it's great to have two CTOs from here in Madrid who are building category-leading businesses, which says a lot for Madrid and is what South Summit's all about. So I'd like you all to give them a big hand and hope you enjoy the rest of your time.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Russ, Bill, and Paul. That was an absolutely fascinating panel. Absolutely brilliant. Will ad agencies of the future be populated by robots? Yes and no. Robots will never replace human creativity. That's good news, I think, for everybody in the room. Can AI and data make advertising smarter, better, more targeted, more valuable to the end consumer? Absolutely. I think that's a really, really important point. And data is really at the heart of this idea of marketing to a segment of one, which is where we are in 2019. So we, at the beginning of the day, I mentioned this idea that Forrester Research have, that we have evolved to this age of the customer, where empowered Phono sapiens demand at an entirely new level of customer obsession. And there are 4 business imperatives for this new age of the customer. Number 1 is to turn big data into business insights. Number 2, to completely transform the CX. Another way to put that is Uberization. Think about the transformation that Uber initiated in the transportation and the taxi industry. Number 3 is to really embrace the mobile mindset. We've never had personal computers so powerful in our pocket 24/7, and people act differently on mobiles than we ever have in human history before. And number 2 is really to become a digital disruptor. And our next panel, a brilliant, brilliant subject, is really going to address several of these points, because now we have all this data and we have all this technology. What do you do with the data? How do you make better decisions? So our next panel, the title of it is Acquiring Data-Driven Decision Skills. Incredibly important. And we've got a brilliant panel of experts lined up to discuss just this topic. So ladies and gentlemen, please give a very warm, very energetic, loud welcome to our next moderator who's going to introduce his panel from IE Exponential Learning. Please welcome to the stage, Ricardo Mesquita.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Thank you for staying with us. I want to introduce you to the next panel on acquiring data-driven decision skills. it's a very eclectic group of people. We invited, and you can join us, please, Carme, Mariana, Ivan, and Ignacio. And I'll go right at it. The main debate today is how can we really become more savvy on data, and how can we acquire those skills? On my left, we have Carme Artigas. Carme is the founder until recently with Synergic Partners that was sold to Telefonica. Clearly has a huge track record, not only building her own business, but in the world of data. Thank you for coming, Carmen. On my right, I have Mariana. Mariana is Portuguese. She's an ex-L'Oreal who decided to jump ship and start her own venture. She's the co-founder and CEO of Sparkle, a business that serves women in their own homes, right? And then on my left again, I have Ivan Martinez, the CEO of Be Influencer, also a startup based right here in Madrid. Ivan is also the academic director for the boot camps, data science boot camps at IE. So thank you for joining us. And Ignacio Larru is the CFO of K-Fund, a very well-known VC in Spain. And he also has a lot of classroom time experience because he's one of the star teachers at IE and knows a lot about data. So as you can see, we're in for a treat. So I'll start right away with a question that how do you see acquiring data skills? I mean, is it an easy challenge or a massive ordeal? Where should people start? Anyone?
Well, I can start if you want. My experience in the class is, it's quite difficult, especially to make the transition from non-data-driven, a lot of the students that come with a non-data-driven sector experience, making that transition, which is one of the things why we have these panels today. A lot of non-data-driven functions and sectors are transitioning into being more quantitative and data-driven, and that is always a challenge for students.
Okay. And is it a challenge that it's up for everyone, or do you think you need to have a specific background or mindset to actually learn data today?
Well, I think it depends on the person. It depends on what you're going to get out of it. No? I think that in data science, you can use data science or the use of data to make decisions in every industry nowadays and in every kind of job. So everything, an informed decision, if you can track some data on it and take decisions based on that, it will always try to help you. It will always help you to compare with yourself and see if you're improving, for example. No? But also, it basically depends on how much return you get out of in your specific activity, how much return you get, right? If you're working at construction, if you're actually building a building, using data there at a strategic level might be very useful, but at the construction level might not be. No? So it depends on how much return you'll get out of it, how much interest you're going to have, and how much return you're going to get off.
I would like to add that probably now is the easiest time when people can acquire those data skills. Because I remember when I started my own company, a big data company, back to 2006, I had to build my own Synergic Academy to train our own personnel, but also our customers' skills, because there were no online courses available, no business schools providing support, not even universities. And I think we have a lot of opportunities now, self-learning, MOOCs, all the main technical and business schools can afford it, and you have many, many options. And I think there is no excuse in learning those skills today.
All right. And what were the main challenges you had? I mean, you had to set up a new venture from scratch at the time, different day and age, and as you said. What were the main challenges to create that data-driven culture?
In my own company?
Yes.
In my own company was that the profession of data science didn't exist. So we had to, try and make errors and finding the right skills. Initially, we had a mixture between engineers and mathematicians, and then we had to learn by doing and understanding all the different technologies. It was a very, very hype time, so you learn machine learning of one methodology, and 6 months after, that was no longer valid, and you need to learn the next big thing. I remember Mahout, and then moving to Spark ML, and that was happening every 6 months. So it was a very important challenge to build on the right skills and have your own learning methodology. But thankfully now, it's much easier because we have a lot of experience already.
Absolutely. I saw in your background that you're chemical engineer. How did you get into the data world? What was the driver, the trigger that made you jump and embrace that world?
Okay, it's in your blood, you know. You know, engineers will understand me. When you are an engineer, you like to solve, complex problems. And logical thinking and critical thinking, I think both are the key, most important skills when you are approaching data science. And when we encourage children to learn code, or to learn programming language, it doesn't matter what is the program language you want them to code or you want to learn, because the important thing behind is logic thinking.
Mariana, welcome to
Thank
Madrid.
you very much.
In your experience with Sparkle, what were the milestones and the metrics that you're looking into when we talk about data?
Well, at the beginning, we were flying a little bit blind because it is a service company and we were looking or more focused in would they use these brands or the other brands because of quality. But as we were growing, we had to stop. We had to look for someone that was data-driven or as a data scientist that is now working with us. And she started looking at, we defined KPIs and such as we were losing 200 services per month because we weren't forecasting like if demand exceeds or not the supply. So when we started doing that, we started growing 30% more. And this is key, and it's key on startups because it's the right environment for you to test. And startups have this ability and they're agile to make decisions quick and move quick, rather than in a company such as a multinational that takes time turning and making decisions.
Could I ask you a question on that? So, in your experience, how useful it is to have like a data scientist role inside the startup? Right? Because sometimes this data science can be applied, the same algorithms, the same things can be applied in every industry. So maybe having someone hired per hour could make more sense because you need a consulting project. It's figure out what is my optimized way of sending emails or whatever way of sending the advertisement.
Yeah, well, in our case, I was lucky. On one hand, I'm lucky because although I'm not data-driven and I don't know how to program in Python I do have some skills because I've worked all my life in advertising, online advertising. So for that, I used to make decisions in how much I should invest or where should I invest based on data. But then again, I was lucky when I was when I became an entrepreneur because we did an acceleration program at Betai in Portugal, and we had contact with a girl that was in operations at Betai, but also had this kind of urge of learning towards data. Then she started working at a huge startup, in data decision, in the data decision area, and she learned a lot. And then she said, Mariana, I love Sparkle, I want to work with you. So she's making both. I'm not talking about only focused data scientists, and she has a lot of other skills that helps us. And in this case, it's important that she is inside the company and not only hiring hours for her to work for us. It makes all the difference.
And Ignacio, in your experience, not only in the classroom, but as in the deal flow that you get at K-Fund, how do you see the evolution of data usage? Do you see it more present in entrepreneurs and startups?
For sure. Well, every startup you receive today is data-driven, no? And customer-centered, no? And like data-driven has become in itself a label, no? That everyone wants to put on himself. It is true that in venture capital and data have a very hard relationship because venture capital is where gut, no? The decisions is made on gut feelings, but then the data, no, can beat gut feelings, no, and back and forth. I see more data-driven startups every day because the tools are there, as Carmen was mentioning. Now it's easier than ever to do it. So if you are not doing it as a founder, it's already saying something of you, no? Like if you're not data-driven in 2019.
You have a problem.
Well, it's not. You're not even trying. Huh?
Yeah. Can I just raise a question because I really felt it under my skin. The question is not for me if it's difficult or not to acquire data skills. The question for me is: are people in charge of big companies? Are people in charge of universities? Are people in charge of, I don't know, startups? understanding the importance of making decisions based on data. Because I felt this when I entered L'Oreal. I was hired to do the digital transformation, but then the guy was relieved. Okay, now I have a girl that does the data transformation. But I didn't have a team. They didn't know what to do. Data wasn't on the center of anything. They weren't even investing in advertising, and I'm talking about a huge company, okay? So mindsets also need to be changed, and it hasn't changed that much in 8 years.
Absolutely. I'd love to hear what you have to say on that, Carmen. I mean, you had the experience with larger companies and corporates. How do you see them facing the challenge with data today?
Yeah, so I've been evangelizing in companies since the last 13 to 14 years, and I've had many challenges. First of all is making big companies understand that this is a strategic corporate issue. It's not just another IT project. This is a matter of strategic importance. Understanding that data is going to be the core of decision making, but also the core and the asset of future business models. That's number one. Second is once you have realized this, and imagine you have convinced the top management, because it's something that must be led by the top management, it must be top down, not bottom up. Second point is how can we get the data? Because all the IT systems, traditional IT systems in corporate organizations, which are probably legacy systems, data is kept into silos and linked to applications. So IT ecosystems are application-centric. We need to move from application-centric to data-centric IT systems. And that's easy to say, but it doesn't happen overnight because you need to introduce new pieces of the architecture to build your own data lake. That means to decouple data from different applications and have it available for the organization. And the third part is not only acquiring data skills, but also the cultural change. And the most important thing and the most important barrier is understanding that when you democratize access to data, indirectly, are you democratizing access to decision-making? And that is not always very well seen from hierarchical organizations. They want to cap the power of decision. So that's probably the most important resilience you may have.
Any take on that?
I teach a course in the MBA called Managing Big Data that doesn't teach any programming, doesn't teach anything related to technology, you know, and a lot of students sometimes enter the course like, if we're not going to program, if we're not going to be doing the models, what are we going to be learning? No? And I always explain that in 2019, acquiring the data decision making in a company is more a managerial challenge than even a technical or a technological challenge, because everyone is data driven until the data says something you don't want to hear. No? And that's the moment of truth of data driven. No? If the data is always saying, everyone is data-driven until you weigh yourself, no? And the scales say something you don't like. No? Then a decision has to be made. Do I throw the scale? Do I buy another scale because the scale is lying? Or do I accept the data truth and make a decision, no? And change my decisions to accommodate for that? And there's some of us that spend our whole life just changing scales, because none seem to work. No? And we go on an on-cycle. Yet we believe we are super data-driven because we measure ourselves every day. That's not the requirement. The moment of truth is when the data says something that goes against your intuition, are you willing? What are you going to choose? And that's, and itself is a managerial challenge.
Sacrifice your own judgment process.
Which is very difficult if you've been making decisions. I consult in professional sports teams. If you've been told for 20 years you are the best, you were the best in your neighborhood, the best in your city, the best in your state, the best in your country, no? And you are ranked X in the ATP, and suddenly here comes this guy that, of course, you don't respect because he couldn't hit a ball, no? That obviously has not played tennis in his life professionally, and says that the computer says you are serving inefficiently. Do you embrace it, or do you say, I don't take advice from someone that hasn't been a professional tennis player? That's the difference between being data-driven and being data-flooded.
So it's also a matter of changing mindsets and the way we approach that, right?
100%.
Where are we now? I mean, we're in Spain. How do you think companies and professionals are facing this data transformation? Do you think they're embracing it, they're fast, they're slow? What rhythm are we at?
I think that, Spanish organizations, in Spain we have quite a good and powerful education system that has allowed to have a lot of engineers that can all work in this environment and understand, as you were saying, as an engineer, you always expect some kind of data to be able to take the decision. And I think so big organizations and smaller organizations are all flooded with engineers, which require this process of understanding. But I believe that, as Ignacio was saying, in bigger organizations, it's extremely hard to change the mindset and the management style as well. So it's not what the boss says anymore. It's let's prove if what the boss says is true or not. I think that in my case, so as an entrepreneur, in our own startup, we have to actually wait for the data to come out before we actually invest that way. No? So let's do a small test. Let's try with 100 users, 100 influencers in our case. If data proves what we thought it would be, then we keep on investing. If not, we stay away from that. And then, as you were saying, if you don't like it, then what do you do? Well, that's intuition, and let's keep on trying. Ask experts to try to see what's the next test. But I think that the hardest part is this change of mindset and this new direction of waiting for data to prove you wrong before you actually move on.
I think there are like 2 dimensions and 2 speeds. So on one side we have big companies that are acquiring data-driven skills and a data-driven mindset, and I've seen that progressing a lot, very positively, in the last 10 years, of course. And I would say that almost all IBEX 35 companies are engaged in data transformational projects, and they have data-driven skills in their company. But they use that dimension to improve their current business, to improve decision-making, to improve new revenue streams, or to make better operational efficiency gains. But on the other hand, you have the digital natives and the new startups and companies like Mariana's companies that are native data companies. And they're using data not to improve an existing business and make it more operational efficient, but it's to make a business model. So it's a data company because the business model is on data. And that is what I don't see big companies, and I see a lot of startups starting to understand that data is the new raw material for business, but the problem in Spain, as always, is a problem of scaling up. And the challenge we have, and I think the good opportunity to be here at South Summit, is to make understand that this is a global business, and that you're not competing against your neighbor, you're competing with all the world. Oh. So that's the challenge you have, the challenge of scaling up. And that's only possible when you are a new company, a startup. Big companies are not very good at disrupting themselves.
So we're talking here about acquiring data skills. So should we focus? Should it be on us, everyone in the room, to start and ignite their own interest and learning process on data, or should be companies pushing forward to try to achieve what you were saying? Who starts and who follows?
I believe it's a dual force, no? In the sense that I teach in the law school. No? Imagine in the law school, if you teach a data proficiency course, now IE has like a horizontal modules that is taught in, and imagine the way lawyers or aspiring lawyers receive a data processing course. It's why do I need this? And I always say the same. You can run from maths, you can run from data, but you cannot hide. No? And data will be there waiting for you, and the fact that you ignore them doesn't mean they're going to ignore you. It's like, okay, if this sector ignores data, the data will ignore that sector. No, it's a matter of time that someone like Mariana decides to start a business, and suddenly someone will change the underlying way you operate. And the companies also, out of desperation or out of need, are also pushing for repurpose and retooling, because we were mentioning, we are changing the way companies operate. You also have to retool the personnel that operates, because if not, you can change the processes, but if you don't change the people's skills and abilities, that change will not be lasting.
Actually, specific in IE, exactly, we get a lot of students that come directly from the company. Companies directly sending a full team. I send you this full team to learn all of the data science skills in our bootcamp, for example. And the same thing applies for the person asking us, are people leaving their own companies for a short period. It's an 11-week program, right? So they leave their company, come to Spain, do the whole program, and go back to the same company. It's themselves leaving their own job and risking the company saying, okay, I don't want you back, or something like that, just because they can't develop themselves. And it sometimes happens as well that they don't end up coming back to the same company. They just switch and they'll go to a new place. A company that adapts more to their own needs.
I mean, you were saying something that it's, what I've seen, we've been seeing in the past couple of years is that we get a lot of profiles that are highly analytical, strong maths and stats, a lot of them with a background in STEM. So for those in the room who do not have that level of background, is it a barrier for you to actually get those skills and do the reskilling, Or is it a matter of effort? Is it a matter of commitment, discipline? How do you see that?
I would say that, first of all, everybody will have to be data literate. So not everybody needs to become a data scientist, an artificial intelligence expert, but all of us in any profession, and of course all our kids and all the existing professions, need to understand data as they understand the alphabet. They need to make decisions based on data. A doctor will have to work with a robot or an AI to make a diagnosis on cancer, and also a lawyer needs to understand an algorithm to predict the success, the rate success, and also journalists are being disrupted by robot journalists that are writing the news better than them. So that's something that is not optional. Coming from a non-scientific background, it doesn't mean that you don't have options. At the other way around, I would say that nowadays the difference between science and we call it arts has disappeared, has blurred. And I would say that at the very beginning I had a team just for few mathematicians and engineers. And later on, I was acquiring more talent in the social sciences. So ethnographers, people from linguistics. And I remember that when you were studying maths or linguistics and your parents' friends say, oh, sorry, your son is studying maths. He only can become a secondary school teacher, or your daughter is studying languages, so she can only be translator. No? Now there's a rise of all these also social sciences, because all the interfaces in the future will be human-machine, and that is where we need the qualitative side. You can tell what is a percentage that somebody is churning to your competitor, but a mathematician doesn't understand why, while a person from social sciences understands why, because understands the customer behavior. So I would encourage people from social science to acquire data literacy, understanding basic, I would say, statistic packages, and one thing that's very important, data visualization skills.
Absolutely, absolutely. We're seeing a lot of people transitioning from, we get a lot of PhDs in statistics, maths, transitioning from the academic sector, want to get into the private sector, so they use sort of a segue to learn a new language, programming language, and they can find a new challenge, right? Professional challenges. So if any of us here were curious to know if we had to give the first steps to actually acquiring data skills, where would you start? Would you do it, with others? Would you do it on your own online? Where would you start? Just a tip for the audience.
I can start,
okay.
Because I'm the one that has less experience. So I started learning a lot online.
Okay.
And then now I'm starting looking at courses such as boot camps, part-time, that you can take after work. And doesn't mean you need to be like 1 year or 2 years or 3 years taking an MBA on this, but at least you can start gaining some skills for management, as you told us before. I've read a study that touched me a lot. I've heard about it as well before from McKinsey, that they concluded that 70% of the companies that wanted to do the digital transformation failed. And I'm going to press the same button again, but we need to never stop learning. You don't have an MBA and it's done. You don't have a course and it's done. You need to keep on learning. And I see that a lot at home. My husband is a doctor. They never stop studying. They need to continue studying. So this is one of the key messages that you need to be curious if you want to follow the journey that's happening, and you need to never stop learning.
I've been at IE for 8 years now, which I always say IE is like a hotel, in the sense that the professors stay, but every you see the same cycle, in the hotels is a week cycle, in IE is 1 year, but you see, and being a man of data and science, I'm always very curious about trying to predict future success with my students. In the class, you're looking at them and you're trying to see, that out of these 60 or 70, X will be successful. Unfortunately, you don't know which ones, because if not, I would be a headhunter. No? But and also, I always treat them like subjects in an experiment. And after years, and I've been trying to analyze. Okay, is it rich versus poor? Is it grades? No, is it no? And I've only came after 7 years of analysis. I can only identify 2 common traits in those that after 3 or 4 years are here versus the ones that are not. And the first one, and this has not been prepared, but it's actually curious. The curious student always performs better long-term than the non-curious. As a professor, you don't like him, no? Because the curious student is always no? more demanding and more, no? So you try to develop some hate but to him. But it's in the long term, it plays better. And the second, if you want to predict the success of a student, you have to meet them the day of the graduation, when they are graduating from the program. If they have, and that's what Mariana was saying, if they have the feeling of this is the end of the journey, game over. It's over. No? Sometimes the students say, like, finally, no, like I reached the goal, no, like, no, and they are like exhausted, but they have the feeling of I've finished the race, no, where's my money? And there's another group of students that the day of the graduation have the attitude of this is the start of the journey, no, like I've been preparing, no, and this is where the good stuff. And those students. So if you take those students plus the curious ones, and if you can find the fit, that's what I would put my money on.
All right. So one tool, yeah.
Yeah. So what I would say is starting by your own. No, the original question was starting by your own or doing it by following some kind of course or online. I'd say that there is one thing which is interesting that happens, I would say, specifically in technical profiles or non-technical profiles that go into technical fields, which is more the data-driven decision processes, is that there is a huge insecurity inside you. It's do I know enough? No? That's a continuous question you have throughout all the way. And you always have you keep on having this question of, I'm sure that there is someone that does it better than me, so do I know enough? Should I learn more? Should I study further? So one thing that I would advise, because I've seen also quite a few students pass through my classes, is to look for a structure that will help you see how filled you are in those environments. And you were saying, for example, in visualization. Visualization is very important. There are thousands of tools to visualize data, but choose like a syllabus. Find your own syllabus. Say something that this is what I want to achieve out of my learning, and then like follow it. You can do that by, of course, following an outside course that will do the syllabus for you, or you can do it internally by yourself or asking some friends or experts. But close your syllabus so that you don't always forever feel that you don't know enough. Because it's something that happens to everyone. Nobody admits it. Everyone feels like, oh, I know so much. But the reality is that everyone is in this insecure cycle where they're trying to figure out everything they're doing, and there's always someone else that knows more than me.
But also because it's evolving, right?
Yep, exactly.
You need to continue learning because you need to be updated.
So I would agree that the learning is a lifelong journey, and everyone must be responsible for that journey. You cannot expect the company to support us on all our training needs. Company will support you on the training the skills that the company is interested in, but you need to have to take the responsibility, and you have, as you see, many options. Don't forget that we are in a global talent war. There's a talent war at a global scale. There is not enough data science or data skilled people in the world. It's not enough to cover all the needs that we'll have in the future, assuming that all the universities in the world will stop their programs and just train data science. So necessarily, we need to upskill the existing labor force. So that's the mantra. The second one is that depending on your interest, if you want to really become a very skilled data scientist or an AI developer, or you want to become a business leader or a manager, able to make decisions based on data, the building blocks are different. But once you gain those building blocks, as you said, and I recommend that you start from something very simple, acquiring basic skills, you very soon as possible, you dive into real data. And you dive into real data problems. And that's what I recommend, to go for a data bootcamp or find some friends to join a datathon. You are not going to win it the first time, but the importance is to understand how you need to work with huge amounts of data, because you expect that you get there and start modeling. And no, 80% of your time will be cleansing data, preparing data, structuring data. That's a hard job. And if you are not understanding this, you will never be able to get to the next step.
Thank you, Carmen. So we're out of time. Love the conversation. Thank you so much for coming. Ivan, Carmen, Mariana, Ignacio. A quick message out there. I mean, never stop learning is probably what I stayed with. Remain curious. The end is not it's the beginning of the journey. There will always be demand for data, so we should all have some level of data knowledge. So I hope you go out there and learn be that online, Coursera, whatever you choose as a tool, but learn, all right? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, everybody. And Ricardo, like a rock star, is actually going to go immediately over to another stage and deliver another panel. So big respect for that. Thank you, Ricardo, for moderating that expertly. Okay, I'm curious to see, has anyone in this room, or how many people in this room, have read a book by Yuval Noah Harari called Sapiens? Are you familiar with Sapiens? Anybody read Sapiens? Yes, some hands going up there. Thank you. So Sapiens was his real blockbuster, and after Sapiens he wrote a book called Homo Deus, and his most recent book is 21 Lessons for the 21st Century. And this is a really fascinating book because it speaks about the skills that we will all need and that future generations will need to survive and to thrive in the 21st century. From memory, I think one of the main skills that he said was adaptability. You need to know about data, AI, etc., but adaptability to the very fast-moving tides of humanity is, in fact, one of the most important skills. So, and our next session is going to be looking at an absolutely key topic around this. You know, we heard about agencies being run by AI. We've heard about AI teachers, but you know, what's the point if it doesn't make our lives better? So our next session is all about actually improving lives with AI, an absolutely brilliant topic. So it gives me great pleasure to welcome to the stage our moderator for the next session from the startup program from Bankinter. Please welcome to the stage, Jose Carlos Huerta.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's go, guys. Hello, welcome. My name is Jose Carlos Huerta. I'm the responsible of Startups program at Bankinter Innovation Foundation, where we invest in high technological potential startups through the support of Bankinter Venture Capital Fund, because we believe innovation and entrepreneurship is the best way to promote the creation of sustainable wealth in our society. And with the same approach, we also develop the Future Trends Forum, the largest think tank of innovation in Europe. The last edition was about artificial intelligence. And with the same topic, today we have bring CityBits, the startup that applies artificial intelligence with social data. Hello, Ivan and Jordi. Ivan, the CEO of CityBits, and Jordi, the data scientist. Could you explain what CityBits is, how it works, some details about the technology?
Of course. Thank you very much for the introduction. Yeah, so CityBits is a social intelligence platform that collects big amounts of social data based on text, processes it, and then brings insights to governments and to cities and to companies to react faster and better, more efficiently to people's needs. In fact, our technology is quite unique for some reasons. One is that we can work with any text data, like CRM data, social media data, emails. And second is that we are language agnostic. We can work in any language of the world. But is it okay for you if I show you a little presentation about what we do?
Of course, go ahead.
Thank you. So we can imagine a normal street like in Barcelona. What happens? Like people start saying things. Not only this, given that we can geolocate text, we can find the points of interest of where people is speaking about what. And then we can answer concrete questions, like, for example, with perception maps. Like, through cities and what the decision makers are doing, we can start trespassing the knowledge from one city to the other one. That means that we can go from the tactics, so providing actionable insights to the decision makers, to strategy, and also knowledge transfer. Yeah, just to show a fast view on the platform, so we can provide aggregated categories, old layers about which categories are outstanding and where, hotspots, perception maps, and also actionable insights. So our aim is to build an ethical and transparent AI that engages decision makers of the society into becoming more responsive.
Amazing. When considering the immense power that artificial intelligence can have, the issue of ethics and what-if scenarios are frequently on top of mind. How CityBits manages the ethical challenges connected with AI?
Yes, I can take this question. I think it's a very important question. It is for us. Because basically, there is this anxiety that at some point there will be machines and algorithms making decisions for us, right? It's going to be an algorithm at some point what makes the final decision whether you get a credit loan or whether you're accepted for a course or into university, all of these things. This is important. This means that technologies like ours is going to have real impact on people's lives. And that sets a standard of accountability. You have to be able to explain why you make a decision. In our vision, when we work with the city council or with the government, we want to become another variable in their model. And we want them to make decisions based on the kind of insights we can extract. These insights are about people and what has a higher social impact. And in order to become that additional variable in the model, we have to make sure that our decision is made correctly. That if we decide that an investment in public infrastructure should go here instead of there is a good reason for that. We definitely don't want that if we tell the government, you should invest €1 million in bike lanes in this city, we have to make sure there is a good reason. We don't want to have people somewhere else in the city complaining that they should have gotten that investment because their problems with bike lanes are more important. And if they do, we have to be able to reason to the city council why we made a decision. And our way of showing them is actually, as you said, as you saw, the dashboard, right? We can, the deep dive that Ivan said. We can justify every decision. We can go to the detail level of the opinion, the actual text. We can see which email motivated the decision, whether there was a trend in Twitter where a lot of people were asking for a particular improvement in the cities. And we have a way of quantifying that. And that's the final variable that we send to the model. This is very important because it has actual decisions in people's lives. And it's all over our technology. Our technology has been designed as a white box where we know exactly which variables are being taken into account by our models to make the final decision. That's one way for us to approach this problem. The other way is that we make sure we understand the problem that we're trying to solve. There is some arrogance sometimes in data-driven approaches where some people think that you just need data, you don't even look at the data, you send it through the algorithm, and the algorithm comes up with a solution. And sometimes you just don't know what the solution is, and you don't know whether you're just fine-tuning for a particular metric or you're actually solving the problem. We work with partners. That's why we actually have very close relationships with city councils, with banks, big institutions with social responsibility who understand the use case, and they can tell us exactly what they need so that we can find a solution and an optimal model for them. The use case is our unit of analysis. It's very important in the way we work.
Do you have any examples, any use cases?
Yeah, we have many use cases. So we are working worldwide already. Just to put some brief examples related, for example, to natural disasters, we are working with partners in Japan in order to see what happens after an earthquake. Okay, what is people saying around an earthquake? And then with that information, we can build a predictive model for the next, to prevent the potential problems of the next earthquake. Another example in Japan is that we are using data from tourists from TripAdvisor and Twitter to identify, Japan is a lot of rural areas, and there are a lot of floodings in summer. So it's very difficult for a Ministry of Industry to understand where a road in which kilometer has been flooded. So we use the data from tourists to identify in which place there is needed a repair, and which is the priority for the tourist in order to repair it. Another example is we are monitoring Sustainable Development Goals across 22 countries in Latin America. The SDGs are really important, but some of them are quite vague and subjective. So what we do is to find the localization, so what's relevant for the local people related to, for example, water, or what is about employment. No, it's not the same speaking about water in Barcelona than in Madrid, for example. Imagine in Argentina or Brazil. Yeah, and another nice project that we are enjoying a lot is in Navarra. Right now, we are monitoring hate speech against vulnerable communities. So every time that in a neighborhood there is a lot of hate speech, or the hate speech is increasing towards immigrants, for example, or technology is detecting it, and then the education department is, let's say, putting the budget on education in counterbalancing all this hate speech that can generate violence.
Okay. And if an algorithm produces biased results, chances are that the issues is in the data itself. So how we can receiving a biased sample?
That's actually a very important question as well.
How we can avoid receiving a biased sample, sorry.
If you think of the last use case that Ivan was mentioning, like hate speech, this is hard. It's hard because even if you just try to collect training data from, say, Twitter, chances are that there's going to be an imbalance there. And the imbalance is, probably going to be towards the negative class. There is hate speech. We know that. That's why it's a problem. That's why we want to deal with it. And it's not as common for people to just speak normally. If they do, that's just a normal speech. You don't have a contrary category. So how do you define hate speech is important. That's why, again, we have to work with partners who help us identify exactly what do we mean by hate speech. Why is this important? But still, the data set is still going to be biased because there's going to be a lot of that, particularly if you train with a data set that is relevant for the domain, that is going to be to contain hate speech. And the question is the ratio. And the ratio is not the same. Like if you train on a data set that has maybe 20% hate speech, it may get used, it may be trained to identify 20% hate speech. So what happens when you have a sample where there is a 5% hate speech? There is hate speech, but the system is expecting 20%. So is it going to identify it correctly as hate speech or not? That's an issue we face, right? As you know, that's actually probably the main source of bias. There are two additional sources. One is perhaps less interesting, which is whether your model is a good model. It has enough complexity to explain the problem, right? And a silly example of this problem is, imagine that you are making a decision on who to marry just based on musical taste, right? You don't care about whether the other person wants to have children, where they're from, just musical taste. That can be a model, but it's going to be a very simple, oversimplified model, and it's not going to be a good model of who to marry, right? That's what happens sometimes. Sometimes your model is just not powerful enough. That's an issue that we solve, again, working with partners, making sure that the use case we have is a use case that we can find variables for in data, and that our representation is suitable for the problem we want to solve. Then there is the class imbalance problem, when you have more examples of hate speech than the other class, as we just described. And then there is an additional problem that is also very interesting, which is when the system is trained on data that comes with a human bias. And the curious example of this, if you think, for instance, of credit loans, has been the history of bad decisions made on maybe racial variables, right? Location in a city, when you want to make sure that people in specific areas of the city don't get a loan because you think that those areas are worse, maybe. This kind of social biases, right? That historically have been happening. And the question is, how do you prevent them from getting into your model, right? And the question is the same. For us, it's just understanding the use case and finding the representation. Why are these variables irrelevant and bad in the first place? Because they should never be used to make the decision. It doesn't matter whether somebody's black or white or man or woman in most cases, right? You want a model that makes a decision based on financial data only. And that's what we define. We find these variables that make the most sense, that fully explain the problem we want to solve. Partners help us do that. And we ensure that our model is not polluted and that our data set is not polluted with irrelevant variables. And just to iterate a bit more on this, we simply don't handle the data. Like if you go to our platform, our option for importing data in our platform doesn't let you specify any personally identifiable variables. We just don't do that. We don't touch it. It's toxic. We don't want it. We aggregate everything from the start. And that's how we provide insights, at the social level. We don't deal on the individual level. We don't want to discriminate. We just don't see those variables. We focus on what's relevant for the problem we want to solve from a social perspective.
Okay, in these last 3 minutes, we would like to open the interview with all the public. Anyone has a question? No one?
Questions from the audience?
Yes.
Okay, if you could put your hand up again. We have a microphone that's going to make its way over to you. Sorry, where was the question? Oops, I'm finding difficulty in seeing where the question was.
Don't be shy.
Okay, did we have a question? Yes, we have one too, all at once. Fantastic. If we could give it to that gentleman and then that gentleman, that would be lovely. If you could please introduce yourself to the room before you ask the question. Thank you. And then we'll come over to you.
Hi, I'm Siddharth here. I'm an international MBA student at IE University. So my question is around the collection of data, the social data that you were talking about. Since you use the text data, is it only Twitter that you use? And do you use other sources of data as well to collect the social, what the people are talking about at a social level?
So basically, just to make sure we understood, you're asking for data sources that we can actually support?
Yeah,
okay.
The data sources and probably the APIs that you use and how do you collect them, basically, the process of collecting data.
Okay. Do you want to take that one?
Go ahead.
Basically, right now we support Twitter. That's our main source of inputs, of course. We also collect from TripAdvisor. We actually pull data from the whole web host API, which gives us many other sources of data, actually. We also support email imports. Some of our clients just have big ticket systems, CRMs, where they already have handled a lot of complaints, claims, different cases. We just learn from them and customize to whatever the problem they want to solve. And and I think that's it. Well, we also support, still being tested, but conversation transcripts, right? That's also something we do. And in this conference, I'm a bit afraid because somebody started considering video, hopefully just at some transcription level, which will be fine. I definitely hope not computer vision because that's a whole different issue. But yeah, like as Ivan said, we are pretty much agnostic in that sense. We just need textual data, whatever the source. We don't care. And actually, at some point, we used to have the problem between long texts and short texts. We fixed that, went through some iterations, but so right now we are source agnostic.
One more quick question from the gentleman over there. If you could introduce yourself, please. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kit Lam. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer for Samsung. So how do you take care of privacy and GDPR?
Yeah. Essentially, it's the same point as I made before. Like we make sure that as of right now, we are GDPR compliant, but still, for some areas of our system, we are still not sure on the details. We are undergoing audits right now to make sure everything is okay. So for those, we just don't collect the data. We don't use any personal details. We just collect textual data, raw, and that's where we extract all the insights that will go into the final report. So as of now, we deal with it by avoiding the problem altogether, except in the areas where we have to comply, then we have compliance. But that's it. I think that's the...
Yeah, I would add, it depends it's case by case, but there are projects that, for example, the data is very sensitive, so we can put on-premise our technology in the house of the customer, so they use it and they take care of that. But by default, so we are funded by the United Nations, we are audited by the United Nations. That means that we have to be GDPR compliant, and we try to put a lot of limits in the input of the data, so we cannot mess it up later.
Time is gone. Thank you, guys. Thank you for being here, sharing your knowledge and your background with us.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jose, Ivan, and Jordi. Wonderful, wonderful panel there. Brilliant. So we've really, on our path, our journey through this data and digital revolution, we've covered a lot of ground, and we've found out precisely how important data is in our lives now and to our futures in many different facets. We've heard about data and travel, data really revolutionizing mobility. We've heard about the future of data-driven advertising. We've heard about acquiring data-driven decision skills, making better decisions by leveraging data. Incredibly important. And our last session, of course, was all about improving lives with AI. And it sort of opened up some big questions there around personal privacy, personal choice, and GDPR and the use of data. I think all of the subjects that we've been talking about really mirror this, this transition that we've come from a world of products through to a world of services, through to a world of overlapping ecosystems. And these ecosystems overlap thanks to open data connections through APIs, secure APIs, things like PSD2. And of course, what this brings into our lives, as we saw with some open banking presentations yesterday, is it adds context to the kind of digital services we can be offered. So it's as much about context and integration as data. And so we're going to wrap this up now with a fantastic session, which is really, looking at all the things we've looked at today, but now looking at the success patterns of data-driven business opportunities. We all want to be successful in business. This panel is going to share with you exactly how to leverage data to be successful. So it gives me a great deal of pleasure to introduce, we need an extra big round of applause because this is the last session of the day, to introduce to the stage from Currency Alliance, your moderator, Charles Ehret. Please, a big round of applause for Charles. Awesome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you for sticking around. Please come out, everybody. You're going to be glad that you did, because we're really going to get into the detail of what are the success patterns of data-driven, because I've listened to a number of the sessions this afternoon, and there's been a lot of very useful discussion, but we want to go deeper. And we think you're here because you actually want to get some new insights based on the experience from our panel. So we have Nacho from Barcelona. I'll let everybody introduce themselves a little bit in their businesses in a moment. Jose with Analytics, and Antonio from Decathlon. And Antonio in particular has been at Decathlon for 18 years, basically driving innovation and sort of agile methodology, so he has quite a long time perspective to show about how the organization has evolved. In my case, my company basically manages a lot of loyalty program transactions between partners. So if you want to earn Avios from Iberia when you stay at Hilton, our company processes a lot of those transactions with the loyalty points between different loyalty programs. And so we have access to a massive amount of data because we work with Lufthansa and Melia Hotels and Visa International and Etihad Airways. And it's the data that allows our partners to make much better decisions on how to engage with their customers. And it's actually the combination of data from a customer who might fly from Barcelona to London on Ryanair, but then they stay in a five-star hotel. Well, Ryanair thinks that person is a Ryanair person, and of course the five-star hotel thinks they're a five-star hotel person. But it's only when you can combine the data about whether they put premium gasoline in their car, whether they are buying gas or buying coffee in Munich, but they didn't fly to Munich on Vueling, that you can start to understand how much share of wallet you're getting, what the customer's lifestyle preferences are. So anyway, data-driven analytics is very important, and these patterns allow us to really serve customers better. So we're going to focus on the title with the keywords being success patterns. And so in the context of defining success patterns, Perhaps, Antonio, you can describe some of your experience with Decathlon and how that's evolved with the culture over time, and especially being such an international organization.
It's a long time. Well, I'll try to do it. Yes, I think in our case it's very important to know that that culture that should be associated with the data, it's also shaped in the way we are organized and the values that we have in the company. We are sporting people, and we are very vital, and we have a way in which the responsibility is very distributed. And it's in this way since a long time. And that shapes also the way in which we need to use the data, because once you decide that you need to distribute the decision, you have to put all the data available for everybody. And even from the very beginning, everybody in the stores, everybody in any point in the company has had access to all the available data, even if the variety maybe it should be restricted to all the commercial KPIs and that kind of things. But everybody could have information about the figures of the sport, the figures in the store, and not only the store manager, but also not only also the department manager, but everybody in the store could have access to that information in order to make the better decisions based on data. And I'm not speaking of today, it's from the very beginning of the Decathlon project. But once you advance in digitization, and then start to appear new channels, we are speaking of omnichannel, the digital commerce, then new KPIs, and a huge amount of data, then I don't remember who is the physics who said one time, it's the size what matters, and more is different. And more is different means that even if we have the same culture, so very distributed way to make decisions and wide availability to the data, we need to increase that possibilities to use and take advantage of the data to do all the works around the commerce and everything. So to put you an example regarding this is, once you decide that everybody should be making decisions with data, you need to adapt your system, all your ecosystem, and your tools to make this possible. Typically, if you want to communicate with your users using a digital campaign, you need to send an email marketing campaign. And usually, this is centralized. In our case, this is also very distributed. So any store, any cell on the company can eventually produce and send and deliver an email marketing campaign. And this is only possible if you distribute also the tools along the company and distribute the data to make it accessible.
Yeah, that sounds great. In fact, I think Decathlon in this respect is quite unique in the world in that their culture's always been, distribute the data and give basically everybody access to the data. So the decision-making is also quite distributed. Most organizations or departments that like to hoard the data. And Jose, for example, perhaps you can introduce yourself in Alta Analytics, but because you've worked in Asia and Europe with a lot of different organizations, perhaps you can describe maybe some differences where many organizations might have specific teams that are responsible for managing the decisions based on the data.
Yeah, thank you. So yes, we are Alta Data Analytics. We are a big data company that analyzes mainly what we call the digital public sphere. So what's the digital public sphere? That's what everybody says in internet, in social media, in comments to news, in the news itself, anything that is digitally available out there. We analyze it and we turn it into something meaningful for our clients. We work for large organizations, and most of the time what they want to understand is different things, right? Different departments have different needs. Some departments might want to know, based on what people are saying out there, what do they think about our products? Or what do they think about this trend? Or what's happening with this trend? And more, what is happening, even what is going to happen in the next elections. So the beauty of the digital public sphere is that it's a huge sample, a huge data set that once you analyze it, you can get a lot of insight out of that, right? Before you used to run surveys to understand what people thought about different issues. Now you can really get what's going on up there and then turn it into something that responds to a key research question. So we work for large organizations, many large corporations, but also organizations such as UN or OECD and some others, where we analyze, again, public sphere in many different aspects. One of the things that we've been doing recently a lot is analyzing disinformation. So because disinformation, these things that we all know is putting in danger democracies, right? We have people disinforming things. It has an effect on the democracy, but it also has an effect on things like vaccines, so on your health, right? There is a lot of disinformation around vaccines, right? The good things about analyzing the huge social debate is that you can map patterns and understand patterns associated to this information. So you are able to tap who is disinforming, which are the vulnerable groups that are being attacked, and what are the questionable sources so that you can do something about it, right? So that's the thing that we are able to do. And just to answer to the key questions.
So the patterns that you tend to see at these clients that either don't work or that tend to work well, and then they repeat the patterns.
This is the beauty of the thing that we do. And we always say, as a key success factor for a big data project for us, the key question is always, once you have a data set, I mean, the difficult part is not to get the data. The difficult part is, what do you want to get out of the data, right? Is what question do you ask the data? The good thing is also that with big data technologies, we are able to process huge volumes of data very quickly, to do complex visualizations, and to iterate very quickly, which enables you to discover new things and then dig into what's there, right? So that's why, in our view, we combine technology, but we also always say this sentence of big data needs big brains, right? You need people to make sense out of that data and link it and map it to a critical business issue for our client, right? So once you know what you want to get out of data, then you take your capabilities and make it work.
Yeah, thank you for that. And Nacho, you started Space Boost about 2 years ago to basically leverage data. But even from your early 20s, you've been involved in digital marketing and managing multiple channels of customer acquisition and conversion rates and all of that. So maybe you can give a little bit of an introduction about yourself and your business, and then give us some examples, or based on your experience over the last 10 or 12 years.
Sure, thank you. You hear me well? Yeah. So yes, I'm quite young, I guess. We started in 2005 working in digital advertising in a big, huge media agency. And at that time, I realized the way the people spend their money in advertising. We're coming from a quite dark world. Now we're going more to a financial world, transparent world, based on that data, where no one can lie at the end, because data says the truth always, if you throw through data. And what we do actually is, okay, you have the data, you analyze the data, and you understand the data behavior, and we take actions. We execute changes. Us, ourselves, we started in 2014, and we lead a team of 80 people in 4 cities, managing an annual advertising spend of around 150 million euros, pretty focused in Google search. And just to give a clear example, when you use technology to automate data management, you always take 3 things. You can manage larger volumes of data, and you can think about any disruptive technology in the history. I mean, even when Gutenberg invented the print, for example, he was capable to manage more data, take fast decisions, and more precise decisions, more accurate decisions. And this is what we get. If you apply this disruption to advertising, at the end, advertising is an equation between product, price, placement, and promotion. So it's about finding the best message, the best ad to the right audience, and I mean even the smallest audience, and at the right price, at the price that makes the advertiser save more or sell more, depending on the profit and losses desire of the company. So you get a better user experience, a better advertiser experience, and a better manager of the account experience. Real example, let's say Decathlon manages thousands of products. Let's say you want to change the price of a product live. We change the price live in the ad let's say you have a new product, you don't need to send an email to your agency or to your account manager, hey, this is the new product. No, we read the data right from your database, and we execute all these kind of changes. We select the audience, we stop the campaign, we pause the campaign, we reactivate the campaign. Let's say we double the campaign to a specific town in Spain because we have seen that that little town has a different conversion ratio. And what happens if you have a different conversion ratio? You can pay less or more because conversion ratio and your target cost per acquisition cost need to be adapted, maybe live, like an economic evolution in life. So we automate all these things.
Okay, and I suppose that you can generate a lot of your own data through A/B testing. So you can even refine your business, decision-making skills based on the results of very specific tests. Do you have any examples about that?
Well, let's say you have 10,000 products, and you can use the Google technologies to optimize that kind of things, or you can get the data right from the database, analyze it, get insights from that data, and test things like, okay, what is the evolution of the curve of sales, depending on each of the changes I apply in the ad copy, in the price I pay for a click, in the kind of color I use for an ad, that kind of things. So actually, just to give you an idea, we're executing over 6 billion changes per day. That leads to higher click-through rates, more or less conversions, depending on what you want, any of the targets you're looking for. Because at the end, if you know where you are going, you will get there, at least, or you can go there. But if you don't know where you're going, you can test wherever you go, wherever you want, but at the end you will be walking around all day.
Fair enough. Yeah, thank you. And Jose, this question's for you, but it's actually about Decathlon. So for more than a decade, they've had quite advanced systems that collect a massive amount of data in one data store, and therefore they can interpret that data in a fairly consistent way. But I suppose you've seen many organizations that have many different silos of data spread throughout their organization. How do they either get the data into one environment where they can interpret it correctly, or if they must keep the data distributed into different databases or silos, how do they apply analytics in good patterns to be able to make sense of the data?
Yeah. In general, I think it's true that in the past, many organizations have data in different silos, right? But it's very clear that we always like to start first, if possible, get all data together, right? Today, we have the technology to do that, to do the parsing, to do connectors, to get all into the same data lake. That always has some advantages. But at the end, we like to start always with the end in mind, right? What is the key question? What is the key research question that we have? We always have like 3 different types of profiles in our team. We have the data engineers, which are the people able to manage huge volumes of data, set the data infrastructure, write the connectors, make sure that we have an architecture that can cope with data from different sources, real-time data, all the type of data sources, all the type of feeds. That's the data engineers, right? Then we have the data scientists, which are the ones that say, okay, let's see with all this data, what algorithms we can do, how we can play with it, what kind of things we can create out of that. But the most important profile of all for us is what we call the business translator. It's the guy that is able to map what is the business need, what is exactly what you want to achieve with the data. So it's someone, by the way, is one of the most difficult profiles to find because it's someone that must understand the technical capabilities of big data, must understand what can be done with data and what the data scientist might be able to do. He might not be able to do it himself, but at least he knows what are the issues or the nuances of doing that. And then is the one able to map it and to link it to some specific key research question. And that is always the way we start projects with our clients. And that's why for some projects, it might be just a matter of getting an algorithm, getting some automation. Some of the times, the projects are more of a consulting thing, and then you have social scientists, people interpreting data to come with something out of it, right? Just to give you an example, yesterday we were presenting here with Fundación Telefónica and Enlighted. We presented an analysis of trends of education worldwide. So what we took is we analyzed 10 million
comments from people talking about education worldwide in the last 2 months. It was not 10 million because we decided 10 million. It's because there was 10 million people talking about it, right? So we just grabbed everyone, anything that was out there talking about education, we got it. And then we're able to map on different geographies what are the key trends, the key issues. The beauty of this type of analysis, when we would do this from banking, is also very interesting, is that then they interview us as if we were experts in education. And the only thing we've done is translate what is discussed out there into what are the trends. And then it's very interesting because we've seen now the power of ideas, right? I mean, any business, any market is driven by the battle for attention on one side, as we all know in marketing, but also the battle of ideas. I mean, a few years ago, we had companies in the oil space telling us that plastic bottles were very good for climate change because, they are a plastic bottle, it's lighter than glass water. Therefore, if you have 1,000 bottles and the truck transporting 1,000, then, of course, plastic bottles are more effective. So it was a matter of energy efficiency. When a few years later, you cannot mention that anymore, right? Now we have all this trend about plastics. We have all these pictures about plastics everywhere in the seas. So the trends are there, and they move very quickly. And the good thing is that as you have all data, you can map who is initiating those trends, who are they targeting, what are the trends that are growing, what are the narratives that they are using, where are the same controversies, and then based on that, make either design a campaign or do whatever action that if you want to sell more shoes or if you want to sell water, maybe you need to change your packaging, right? So all those are the type of decisions that you can now make, not just based on guesswork or based on but based actually on data, and data that maps what people actually think, or whatever, it's your question, right?
Okay, yeah, perfect. And so, Antonio, at Decathlon, I'm sure that decision-making has evolved over the last decade. I guess my question is, how do you make sure you're asking the right questions? And then, is it dependent on people to decide what questions to ask, or is it a combination of people and then some other capabilities that you have that help you learn new questions that you should be asking of the data in order to make better decisions?
I would say that this is a combination of both. On one hand, we need, because I think thinking of patterns, I think that context is very important when you try to use data and you want to take advantage of the data to make decisions. And context, you need to interpret, and it's who better than the people to interpret the data in its own context, no? In the behavior where they are working. This is what we call this is what it's called the subsidiarity principle. If you need to make a decision, the decision is better make if you are near of the effect of the decision. So that combination in which you need to leave that everybody could use the data where they can interpret the effect of the data when they need to make the decision. But on the other hand, you need to do, or in a better way, you need to be agile. Not agile in that interpretation where you need to apply methods or you need to apply a kind of ceremonies, but you need to be agile in a kind of capacity to adapt or your context. So in that way, you need some kind of skills that let you experiment, that let you learn from that experiment, that distribute that capacity to learn in a collective way. So if you combine this, so letting people that capacity to access, to explore the data, and interpret the context, to make the better decision in the context than where they are. And on the other hand, they have some, I would say, principles to experiment, to learn from the results of the experiments, and to share widely what they learn on the experiments. You have a better way to adapt and do your business and evolve the way you want to do your business. No? That kind of combination of both.
Okay, yeah, perfect. And Nacho, in your case, maybe 15 years ago, you had to rely on your own experience and education and intelligence to make decisions based on the data, of course. But you've certainly seen tools evolve to the point where now the tools are actually helping make decisions, and especially if you're managing 1 billion different, data points. how do you see this evolving over the next 2 or 3 years? Are we going to need more data scientist type people, or is the technology actually going to reduce the demand, or is the industry just going to grow so much that we're going to need more of both?
I think we talk too much, and this is very honest. I think we talk too much about artificial intelligence, big data, and all that, well, buzzwords that a lot of people still don't know what they mean. And maybe we sometimes just using more Google spreadsheets or even Excel with some macros maybe would be a lot helpful than a lot of other things. This is the true reality. I mean, a lot of people managing a lot of money, a lot of cash in advertising or in product buying or whatever you want, they should start doing these kind of things, obviously. Otherwise, they will die. And I'll give you an example. Last Easter, we were in San Francisco in the Google Marketing Live, and one of the VPs of Google said to all the channel sales partners, we work with them, he said, okay, you have 2 years ahead to change your whole business. Otherwise, you will die. We will guide you through these 3 ways, which are automation, data integration, so understanding sources and destinations of the data while it's transformed, and the audience's management. So this is a game about data. No doubt about that. There will be less space for creativity, which will be very strategic and the source of success for sure, but no more decisions taken on inspiration or I think it will fit or I think whatever. So, but still a lot to improve in data management for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's still quite a lot of intuition that drives business decisions. Anyway, but in the interest of, I guess, joining the band, because they started 20 minutes ago, I think I'd like to leave you with one final thought. More traditional businesses have been selling products or services, and the margins on those products and services have been shrinking over time, in large part because of competition. Almost everything's a commodity now. You can find substitutes and alternatives just about everywhere. Data-driven organizations tend to understand their customers better. They find ways to add more value to the product or service. In many cases, they actually find ways to convert the product or service that they're selling into much more of a value-added capability. And that is sort of a smart thinking type organization. And as a data-driven organization evolves over time, they actually start to build a much closer relationship with their customer based on differentiation. And that type of loyalty and bond with a customer means that you can build sustainable profitability, and it's not always a race to the bottom. So, we've been talking a lot about being data-driven today. Hopefully, we've shared a few useful examples today. But the main reason why this is so important is that each of you need to figure out how you can add more value to your customers so that they're more tied to you over the medium to long term, and therefore you can build sustainable profitability in your own organization. So thank you very much for attending today, and hopefully it was worth your while. We'll be around for a few more minutes after the session in case you have any additional questions. Thank you.
Wonderful. What a perfect way to wrap up our Data and Digital Revolution stream. Thank you so much, Charles and guests, for that wonderful, wonderful session. You heard it there from people who really, really know. Smart data-driven businesses are pivoting from products and services to value-added business. So thank you so much to our expert speakers. Thank you so much to all of you, to all of our speakers. Thank you to the band who joined us unexpectedly for that lovely musical accompaniment. Nice energy. Good. And thank you very much to all of our production team down at the back and at the side for keeping things mucho suave. Can we have a round of applause for our production team, please? Awesome. Thank you. So my watch says it's Cerveza o'clock. I hope you're going to join me. My name's Oisin Lunny. Please do connect on LinkedIn. Thank you all so much for your time. See you next year.
the legend of the phoenix. All ends with beginnings. What keeps the planet spinning? The force from the beginning. Love. We've come too far to give up who we are. So let's raise the bar and our cups to the stars. She's up all night to the sun. I'm up all night to get some. She's up all night for good fun. I'm up all night to get lucky. We're up all night to the sun. We're up all night to get some. We're up all night for good fun. We're up all night to get lucky. 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 The present has no ribbon. Your gift keeps on giving. What is this I'm feeling? If you wanna leave, I'm with it. We've come too far to give up who we are. So let's raise the bar and our cups to the stars. She's up all night to the sun. I'm up all night to get some. She's up all night for good fun. I'm up all night to get lucky. We're up all night to the sun. We're up all night to get some. We're up all night for good fun. We're up all night to get lucky. 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 She's up all night to the sun. I'm up all night to get some. She's up all night for good fun. I'm up all night to get lucky. We're up all night to the sun. We're up all night to get some. We're up all night for good fun. We're up all night to get lucky. 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 She's up all night to the sun. I'm up all night to get some. She's up all night for good fun. I'm up all night to get lucky. We're up all night to the sun. We're up all night to get some. We're up all night for good fun. We're up all night to get lucky. 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 We're up all night to get. 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 We're up all night.